The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. I know you have been touring northern Georgia where much of these problems have occurred. What have you seen on the ground? Thanks for joining us, first of all, Governor. And what needs to be happening that's not happening right now?
Well, thanks for having me on, Clay. First Lady Marty Kemp and I have been on the ground really since Saturday. We were in Valdosta, Georgia, down near the Florida County line on Saturday. We went to Augusta Monday and then had to get back to Atlanta for a few things. And then Tuesday we were back down on the ground in Nashville, Georgia, which is Berrien County, which is in the really southern part of our state. And we kind of worked our way through 7 or 8 counties over 2 days up to just right outside Augusta last night. So we've been anywhere and everywhere. And I mean, this is one devastating storm. It was incredible. I think Georgia Power previously, their worst storm ever, they had to repair 1,700 poles. In this storm, they have over 8,000. So that gives you an idea of the width of the windshield on this storm, one of the biggest in the Atlantic. Even though it did not end up being a Cat 5, it's still one of the biggest hurricanes to come out of the Gulf. And it only stayed in Florida for a little while and then hit us, went all the way across our state, and obviously went on up into South Carolina and North Carolina and Tennessee, parts of Alabama. But it was devastating for us. I mean, it's bad everywhere we went, but it's amazing how many people we have responding. We've got over 20,000 utility workers in the state right now. We visited with over 1,000 of them yesterday morning at their base camp. We have 2,000 Georgia National Guard called up. We'll probably have, all of those people working by sometime tomorrow. I know we've got 1,600 or 1,700 on the ground today. So we're getting supplies to people. We're getting power turned back on and getting people at least back to having some comfort in their lives. But it has been one massive storm we're dealing with.
Governor Kemp, it's Buck. Thanks for being with us. We know you're a call it like you see it guy. The federal response, basically a week in now, what can you tell us about it? Is it lacking? Is it getting better? What's the truth?
Well, thanks, Buck. Look, from the Fed's perspective for us, I mean, we did an early state of emergency like Governor DeSantis did, so we were able to prepare with state assets, have all of our partners in the state operations center before the storm hit, have people on point, called up, ready to go, whether it was the, Department of Transportation, chainsaw strike teams, Department of Natural Resources, chainsaw strike teams, the Georgia Forestry Commission, bulldozers, chainsaws, and having the guard teams ready to go, heavy, teams that can move heavy equipment, do swift water rescue, all that kind of stuff that you may need in a storm like this, we were able to have prepared and ready to go. So we weren't really waiting around on FEMA, and we haven't this whole storm. So I wouldn't really have a whole lot to say about, what they've been doing other than the original emergency declaration they did. There was only 11 counties, which a lot of people were upset about that, including me. I was hearing from a lot of people about that. I talked to the White House and the FEMA administrator, and shortly thereafter they added 30 counties to that list, and we're continuing to push them to do more.
Look, there are a lot of people of all different political persuasions affected by this storm in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina. You've seen a lot of it in Georgia. We hear and are hearing from a lot of our listeners in all 4 of those states that the federal response, frankly, has been disastrous and that they're not seeing very much help. And we know that some people are starting to get signals now. They're listening to us on battery-powered radios. Is Joe Biden, in your experience, responsive? Is Kamala Harris? Who is heading this up for them? Do you think they understand the scale and magnitude of how awful this storm has been? And do you think they're responding in a way that justifies the magnitude and awfulness of this storm?
Well, I wouldn't be able to speak to the other states, guys. As you know, I've been focused on my own. I mean, we've got as much damage in some ways as any of the other states. Obviously North Carolina is dealing with tragic situations with literally hundreds of people that they know is missing, and not being on the ground, not knowing the response so far and who's been doing what from a federal and state perspective. I wouldn't want to speculate on that. I can just tell you that from our perspective, we were ready to go before the storm hit. The concerns that we've had that we've relayed to FEMA, even though we were frustrated with only of the 11 initial counties. They heard loud and clear where we were. And, I just told them, my opinion. I said, y'all are sending a signal of mixed messages here, and people on the ground feel like they're not being paid attention to. They feel invisible. And, that's a problem for the response, and it's a problem from you all. But, they did act when we said something to them about that.
When you look at all the devastation in Georgia and elsewhere, we got so many people out there listening to us in all 50 states that are saying, what can we do? Good American spirit, uplift. What would you tell people out there that are seeing what has happened to this region and seeing how many people are devastated? What can people from outside the region do? And also, in your home state of Georgia, what can people do to help everybody that's affected? What would you ask them to do?
Well, I'll tell you, we've seen so many heartbreaking and heartwarming things on the ground. I mean, talking to first responders that had to respond to a 27-year-old mother that was in the bed with her 2 one-month-old twin boys, and a tree fell on them and killed all 3 of them. And, talking to those people that had to respond and extricate those individuals, I mean, that is some really tough work, guys. I mean, it is just heartbreaking for our first responders. And there's been several instances like that. So, people that want to help, I would be given to nonprofits that are good organizations that support our first responders, men and women in law enforcement. There's also a lot of the faith-based community that's responding. There's a little bitty old church in Kite, Georgia, which is in Johnson County, that's feeding 400 to 500 people a day, just trying to keep people fed through this. I think going to faith-based organizations that and trust, they know how to filter money to states like ours and South Carolina and North Carolina to help people in need. And then, certainly we got the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and people like that are on the ground in Georgia and many of these other states as well.
Governor Kemp of Georgia, appreciate you making the time for us. God bless. I know you're taking care of a lot of folks in your state right now. Our thoughts are with you. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, guys. God bless.